Hello and welcome to another tutorial. In this tutorial we will be making a 3D character controller similar to Super Meat Boy. As you can see, we have movement, we have jump, double jump, variable jump, meaning that if we hold the button we jump higher. We have wall sliding, wall jumping, and acceleration. So let's get started. Open up the project where you find in the download links below, and inside the 2D player controller assets you will find an example scene. So this is the scene we'll be working on. Every wall has a simple box collider 2D and a sprite renderer, except this red wall, which has a script no slide jump, so we won't be able to slide or to jump from this wall. Our player is a simple sprite which has a rigid body 2D and a box collider. So let's start. Create our controller input. Right click on the project, create, C# script, player input. Select our player, drop it on our player and open it up. So now let's zoom in. We're not gonna need the start, we're gonna need the update, but later. Let's start by creating our helper functions. First we're gonna need a private bool, which is gonna check if the player is on the ground. Now in order to do that, we will do a line cast straight out from the bottom of our sprite. So we're gonna need something where the length of our line cast. And we're gonna need an offset, so we're not hitting our own collider, and take it as we're hitting the ground. We're gonna set the origin of the line cast. So the origin of the line cast will be at the position of the transform, of our own transform, at the X. The X will be our current X, and the Y will be our current Y minus the bottom of our sprite, and minus our offset, the collider threshold. Now we're gonna set the direction of the line cast. So our direction will be downwards our origin minus the length we want the line cast to be. So let's move on. Let's do our line cast. We're gonna need raycast 2D hit. So and we return the hit. So if the line cast hits something, the boolean will be returned as true. So now we'll need another helper method to see if there is a wall to the left. Now it's almost the same as above. Let's quickly add that. Instead of 0.001, we just add 0.01. We're gonna need the origin of our line. Which is, instead of getting the bound of our sprite, our bottom bound, we will take the far left point of our renderer. So we can just take this and change the y to the x. Make sure they are the same. Alright. And now gonna need vector 2 and vector 2. Nope. Run line start dot x minus length to search, and we get our transpose y. Let's do our line cast now. With our origin and our vector to search. And our return value, which we haven't added, so we will add now. We will need another boolean, so we'll add this to the top, and this boolean will be our hit. So if there is a wall, this will return true. However, we want to add another check here. Let's fix it. So if the hit has hit a collider, and that collider has a component not slide jump, then the return value will be false. And then we return a return value. This one is for this red. We see how we have some errors. This one is this. This has the script no slide jump. So instead of adding a tag, we just add a script, an empty script. If we open this, just empty. See, there's nothing inside. So let's see what our errors are. Let's start. Yeah. Fix that. Hit F8 to see if there is other errors. The error here it takes. Yeah. We forget to add our Y here. Effect. So the error was somewhere here. I had it with a capital S. So yeah, check your spelling. And I have forgotten to add the Y to our vector 2 here. So that is if we hit a wall to the left. Let's add one if we hit a wall to the right. This will be exactly the same. So we copy paste all of it, but instead of the minus, we just make them to plus. And we can change that also, so we don't confuse ourselves later. Hit F8 to see if there are any errors. Build is successful, and that concludes our helper functions. Now let's go to the top. We're gonna start adding our variables. We're gonna need a public float max speed, which is gonna be the maximum speed our character can move. We're gonna need a public float for our acceleration, so it has more fluid movement. We're gonna need another float for our jump speed, and we're gonna need another float for a jump duration. We will add a boolean to see if the player can double jump, and we will add another one to see if we want the player to be able to double jump when he has hit a wall. Now on top of that, we will need some internal checks. So just add this now, and we will later see where they are used. And that are our variables. Let's go to update. Now we will need a float to check for movement on our horizontal axis. So if the horizontal float is smaller than minus 0.1, that means the player has hit the left button. So we will check now if the velocity of a rigid body is smaller than our negative dot maximum speed. We are putting a negative because we want him to move to the left. So if he is, we will add force to his rigid body. And that force will be minus the acceleration. Remember, the minus is because we want him to go to the left. So now this will happen every time, and by every time I mean every frame. So now we will add the check. So if our velocity succeeds our max speed, we will manipulate our velocity and we will make it our maximum speed, our negative maximum speed, because we want him to move on the left side. So this checks if our velocity is smaller than the maximum speed. If it is, then it will add force, the acceleration, it will add force to him so he can move to the left based on our acceleration. So how fast he can hit the maximum speed. If the velocity is higher than the maximum speed, then instead of adding the acceleration, we just add the maximum speed. And that is for movement on the left. Now on the right, we will add an if statement, and we will check if the horizontal is higher than the 0.1. And we're doing this, we're not just using the else statement, because the player might have left the movement buttons, so we don't want him to move if the horizontal is at 0. So for the right side it's the same, so we copy paste this, and instead of minus we now want to see if the x is smaller than the maximum speed, and we want to add the positive acceleration, and we want to add the positive max speed in case the velocity is higher than our maximum speed. And that is about the movement. Let's hit F8. So it's built. So now if we have assigned, if we hit play, we can see he's moving. However, if we hit up, we don't jump. So let's go back to our script. And we will add the bool here to store our helper method, the return of our helper method. So we just store this here so we don't have to call the function every time, because it's easier to just put it here and it doesn't require too much from the performance. We will need a float to check if there is movement on our vertical axis. We will need another check, but if we are on the ground, we can double jump. So if there is movement on the vertical axis, so the player has hit the up button, there you go, here. So if this is the first frame where the player has hit the jump key, so that means we just pressed the up button. We start doing our checks here. So if we are on the ground, or we can't double jump and we have allowed the player to double jump, or we have allowed him to double jump after a wall hit, we're gonna need a variable wall hit here. We're gonna need an integer to see our wall hit direction. We're using this later, so if we jump on a wall, this wall, if we jump to the left, when we hit jump again, we will jump to the opposite direction. So you can do some jump from here to there and stuff like that. Let's go back to our script and see how this is done. So we now call and store our helper functions here. This is the same as above. We are storing these functions here, so we don't have to call them every time we need them. So we are checking if there is some movement on the horizontal axis, so the player has pressed a button, the left or the right. And if there is a wall hit, then our wall hit will be true and our wall hit direction will be 1. So if there is a hit on the left side, which is the left is always -1, the next direction we want to go will be to the right. So we're making the wall hit direction to 1. Now, else, if right wall hit, so if there is a right wall hit, our wall hit will again be true and our wall hit direction will be -1. So now so now if there is not a wall hit, and we are on the ground. Or can double jump, and of course we have enabled him to double jump. Then we can jump. So we start manipulating our velocity, the velocity of our rigid body. So in order to do that, rigid body to d dot velocity equals new vector 2, and this will be our current velocity for the x, and our y value will be the jump speed. We reset our jump duration, and we enable the variable jump. Let's hit F8, is on ground. So we fix this. This was wrong. I had the function is on ground here instead of our boolean. So let's go back. We'll hit right here, and we're going to add another statement, which we will say him if there is a wall hit. So now, if there is a wall hit, we want our velocity. We want to still keep manipulating the velocity, but we want to multiply the x with our wall hit direction. So you see, this is where we use this. So if he has left, if we have hit a wall to our left, then our velocity will be multiplied to the other direction. Let's reset again our jump duration, and there is a variable jump. We can do the variable jump. Now, if we are not on the ground and there isn't a wall hit, we disable our double jump. Hit save, press F8 to build, so we don't have any errors, which is good. And now this is the first frame. This is what will happen, the first frame where our player hits the up button. So we want to start with our second frame. So if the player can do a variable jump, we start adding to our jump duration. And if our jump duration our internal jump duration, this is our internal variable, as you see here. is smaller than our jump duration that we have set from the inspector. We subdivide this with 1000, so to convert the milliseconds to seconds. So if the internal jump duration, the timer, is smaller than the maximum jump duration we have set, we keep manipulating our velocity. Hit F8 to see if there is any errors. There are no errors, so we're pretty much done, but we need to add what will happen if the player leaves, doesn't press stop pressing the button, the up button. So we'll just add an else statement here, and we start resetting our variables. Roll S to save, F8 to build. Let's see if we have any errors. There are no errors. Okay, let's hit play, and you see our controller is done. As you see in the red, we can't double jump from here, but we can from here. So if you see here, there is a little problem, you know, the jumping is too strict, and that because there is a little problem, there is an error on our code. So if you go into line 95, we've instead of resetting our internal jump duration, we resetted our public. So just change line 95 to our internal variable, hit F8, no errors, assign our jump duration. This was at 0, so assign it to a bigger value, hit play. Now you see it's better, and that ends this tutorial. Now the nice thing about this controller is that whatever you add here, if you add where is it, the D object, whatever sprite you add here, and if you add a box collider or any 3D collider and a rigid body 3D, you can simply drag and drop the player input, close this so we're not confused, and if you hit play, you can simply move any sprite with this controller. As you can see, we're doing some cool stuff here. And that was it. So like and favorite and subscribe if you like the video. I will be making more. I'm trying to have at least one every week. So see you next week.